Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for coming. We're going to start our meeting off a few minutes after 7. I want to turn it over to the Finance Chairwoman, Linda Havegood, to start off, and we'll have a slide presentation tonight. We'll go through that, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. People want to ask questions about what they saw, what they heard, other budget questions, we can do that as well. And hopefully we'll have the answers. We have some other members of the council here tonight from the Finance Committee, David Contract, David Kiefer, Mike Damagala, all members of the Finance Committee, and some staff members here too, our CFO, making sure, our CFO, making sure we're spending the money right, our assistant administrator, our police chief are here as well. So, okay. All right, I'll turn it over to Linda Havegood.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jim. We're going to have a very jovial evening tonight, it seems, so that's great. Well, welcome everyone. We've made this a practice of holding this meeting as we start off the new budget process every year. This meeting is really to accomplish two goals. One, to report back to the shareholders of town, the people who are contributing through their property taxes into the town's budget. We presented at the end of our budget completion process what the budget looked like in April, and now as the year has now concluded, 24, we want to go back and let everybody know how we did against that plan. I think that's important, and I think everyone on the Finance Policy Committee, thank you for coming. It's nice, and I think we all are excited to report back to you tonight on that. And then, as Jim mentioned, this is also an opportunity for us to hear from you, things that you would like to see us consider in the 2025 budget. So, Heather, thank you very much for putting this beautiful presentation together for us tonight. Jim introduced the members of the Finance Policy Committee. I'm Linda Havegood. David Contract and I have worked on this committee together for almost the whole time we've been in office together. And Mike Damagala and David Kiefer are now entering their second year on the committee with us. So you're experts now. So Jim Gilday has been doing this for decades, as you can see in the presentation. It's his 24th year of putting these budgets together. So it's always a new puzzle every year, which makes it fun. But it's really nice working alongside of Jim because he brings so much experience and knowledge to the equation. Our CFO is here tonight, Scott Olson, also with bringing wealth of experience in municipal finance. And you'll see some stats later that we're going to give Scott full credit for. Heather Ray, our assistant town administrator, is getting more and more involved in all the things related to running town and very active in our budget process. And then we noted at the bottom the outside firms that we work with, Saplee Clooney and Roget McCarthy, who are our audit firm and our bond counsel. So this pie chart you've probably seen before. It adjusts slightly every year. As you see at the top of the slide, the total tax collections for the town are getting up to be a very large number, $192 million plus. That is, every taxpayer pays into all of these different pieces of the pie. And we put a circle around the municipal tax levy because that's what we have responsibility for in town. The other budgets are, other parts of the tax bill are determined by the other things that you see in this pie chart. So the library aspect of this is determined by the overall tax ratables in the town. The other things are basically determined by this. The other large part of it is the school district, of course. So keep that $31.3 million number in mind as we go to the next slide, because this is something that I wanted to point out. It sometimes is a little confusing to people about how our municipal budget comes together. So the $31.3 million, which is the tax levy, the property tax, the aggregation of the property taxes, that number is then augmented by revenues that come into town through other means. We gave some examples of where that revenue comes from to supplement the property taxes, construction permits and parking meters and parking permits, fees from the municipal court, various licenses, interest on investments that the town holds, franchise fees, state aid, the little bit of state aid that we get, and then delinquent taxes. So those are things that supplement the property taxes, but as you've probably heard me and the other members of the Finance Policy Committee say in the past, one of the things that we are always trying to do is increase the other sources of revenue that come into the town, because that enables us to keep the tax levy or the property tax level of all the residents down as much as possible. What isn't shown on that list, but is promising to be a bigger and bigger part of our other revenue stream, is pilot dollars. So this coming year, 2025, is going to be the first year that we will really be able to anticipate monies coming in from pilots, as Westfield Crossing has more and more residents coming in. So that's going to, help us have other sources of revenue and give us more ability to manage property tax levels. Then, as you look here, this is just a breakdown of the municipal part of the budget, all the different categories that come into play. And you'll see as Jim goes into more detail, there are a lot of things on this list that we do not have a lot of control over, a lot of costs that are basically dictated to us. And so that just gives you a pretty good breakdown of how it all comes together. The largest portions, really coming from salary and wages. So we can go on to the next slide. I'm going to let Jim start diving into the detail around the budget recap, and I'll point out a couple of things along the way.
Chime in, okay. Thank you, Councilman, and thank you all for being here. So as Councilman Havgett said, we're still in 2024, just recapping what happened. Again, a couple of little highlights on this slide, a lot of stuff on this slide, and but again, maintained our AAA rating, which is important. Only 8% of municipalities have that. We've had it for many, many years, and that's because of good financial management we have for many, many years. So on the managed spending challenges, last year, 2024, we did have increases in statutory required expenses, about 2.26% increase, which is not too bad. That represents things like pensions, health insurance, Social Security, utilities, the Railway Value Sewage Authority. Salary and wages is up unusually last year, a higher number. There's reasons for that, though. The council, one of our big things we did last year is restructure the Public Works Department, which actually we're seeing benefits from already. We added some employees, and created new positions that didn't exist before in supervisory roles, so we added some money there. Plus, that also includes contractual obligations for different unions we have as well. We also invested in new employees in some departments as well to kind of create efficiencies as we go forward. And operating expenses, we actually had a very good year last year, only 1.9% increase in operating expenses. So that leads to, and there was a slide before, some of the appropriations where the appropriations go. So surplus, fund balance is called lots of different things. Surplus is the easiest to understand. In 2023 to 24, we had a very good year, and we kind of knew that would happen partially because we had a payment coming in from the senior housing after a settlement we had with them that we knew we'd have some money. But even with that payment, we actually did very well. So we raised over $10 million at the end of 23 to put into surplus, so that the beginning surplus in 24 was over $15 million, $15.4 million. So that gives the town council flexibility to manage its budget, really looking to manage revenue losses, non-discretionary expenses if we have them, and ultimately manage the tax rate. And we'll get to that back in a second. By using the $6.7 million of surplus, which is a large number, even though it was a larger number, we still left 8.7 in the bank, which was reserved, not to be touched, to 2025. So that's and our goal was to replenish back to 11 million. So what do we do in 24? We actually produce for municipal purposes, not county, not school, not library, but for town purposes, which we have a control over, is 0% tax rate for municipal purposes. That's a big deal. And of course, the average tax rate since 2019 is 1.2% for town purposes. Appropriations were up 3%. And again, we made a lot of investments in personnel, as we said, and we actually did well revenue-wise in interest on investments and excess tax collections in 2024, which we're going to jump into in a few minutes in 2025, how that helped us. But 24 was a very good year from a financial perspective, and again, maintaining the AAA rating is something that helps us not only just as a reputation, but also as we go to the bond markets in the future for money we borrow. A couple of key achievements in 2024, capital-wise. We'll talk more about capital later too. We continued a very aggressive road campaign, not only for town roads that we budgeted for, but the utilities, which we require them to repave roads when they do infrastructure work. So 16.7 miles completed in 24, pretty amazing between utilities and town. And that's not a small thing. We'll get into some totals a little bit later. Fire department had a very significant year. Not only did we finish the increase in staffing in the fire department in 2024, we also purchased the home next to Firehouse number 2 on Central Avenue for future expansion of the fire department's headquarters, and as well as purchased and budgeted for a purchase of a fire truck replacement, which was budgeted for and is in the process of being built as we speak. So those are all future planning issues for the department and staffing levels that were done in 24. Also, amazing grant funding again, $1.6 million in grants offsetting things we were doing. Downtown Westfield Corporation completed their strategic plan, which will now guide their future in making decisions for downtown items, including some staffing issues, which they're working on right now. Construction department, again, another very busy year. Construction department, Westfield has always been very busy. Take the larger projects off the table, whether it be developments or otherwise. Even with those things not factored in, people in Westfield spend money on their homes and their properties, which is a very good thing for the town and for home values. Kitchens, bathrooms, redos, outside patios, pools, the list goes on and on. So people invest in their homes, and that actually produces revenue through permits. Councilman Habgood mentioned before, our CFO is sitting there. We actually had a very good year in interest on investments. Scott, our CFO, does a great job of moving money around where he can, getting the best interest rates we can. And so we actually had an interest on investments totaling over $1.2 million, which was actually over $400,000 more than last year. So another very good year in interest on investments, and that helps to actually, reduce the tax-supported budget. And then the last thing is, again, Westfield residents, we're all in here, Westfield residents, we pay our taxes. Our tax collection rate for taxes is always usually over 99%. Could be 99.1, 99.5, 99.6, but it's a very good thing, and that's not a lot of towns can say that, and that's an important thing. So we should thank the residents and ourselves for paying our taxes on time and in full. A couple of other things about, February 1st, by the way, this Saturday. So public improvements, some other things to highlight of what happened in 24. My favorite picture, I'm a big fan of the new street signs, but we're doing that as we speak. That started last year. So new street signs townwide, that was in the capital budget last year, and we're putting that into place. Public Works is doing a phenomenal job with that. Memorial Park Playground has actually been installed. We'll be opening in a matter of weeks, I hope. Some final touches being done there, but that was, again, another inclusive playground in Westfield that was put in through capital. 400 trees planted by Public Works Forestry Department. ADA ramps included as we do road jobs, complying with ADA compliance, and putting these things in new or adding them where we think they're appropriate. Bike racks in town, we've actually, we did bike oases, if you might remember that 2 years ago. We're now adding more bike racks in different strategic places in the downtown. Some have already been installed in the train station. We're adding more in the downtown in the coming weeks. The Tomacos Park design plan, we actually had a meeting today. Councilman Kiefer and I and Heather were on a call today. That process has started to actually have a design plan created by a third-party consultant with committee and public input to come up with recommendations for a multi-phase, multi-year plan for Tomacos Park new designs. We also did Tomacos Park already, resurfaced tennis and pickleball courts. We continued investment. Our police chief is here. In public safety, we have license plate reader machines, which are really, I'll just say it out loud and not on the slide here, but 2024, I think it's 7. Is that right, chiefs? only 7 cars stolen, when the year before we had 24, and every year before that it was over 20 cars. So this technology plus the officers' efforts in the field have really helped to deter and move that kind of crime outside of our borders, which is amazing. Stormwater enhancements continue. Obviously, it's part of our road paving program. Memorial Pool filtration system is underway right now, the replacement since 1987, I believe, or 86. New field athletic equipment. Last year, you might remember in this meeting, we talked about allocating new money to Public Works, not only for staffing and restructuring, but for some equipment to take care of grass fields and parks better. So we've now got that equipment. We're also looking to work with the Board of Education to slowly over time take over responsibility of their fields one at a time, because they are more of an internal organization takes care of facilities. We do a lot more outdoor work, so that kind of makes sense. And then we had a very big year in public safety. One of the things we did, there was 4 all-way stops installed at various locations in town, and so far we're seeing good results. Accidents are down. And so again, these are just a list. There's lots of other things here, but you can see when the town staff is given resources, we can actually produce results on various fronts. And again, the staff does a really amazing job. So that's 2024. Quick recap. We had a very good year financially and achievements and results. We now jump to 2025 like we do every year in our budget process. Quick overview of what the budget process, generic outline here. So we always do a capital plan. Capital plan statutorily is a 6-year plan. We submit to the state every year. We focus on a 3-year window, because that's realistic to plan for. So we're working on that now, and that is, the biggest part of that usually is roads, drainage, recreation. It could be public safety items. Every year is different, but that'll be formulated. And usually March, April, we'll have an ordinance introducing this year's capital plan by ordinance. Department heads we've been meeting since November, December, formulating budgets, wrapping up 2024. We close out the year with the auditors, which we did earlier this week, finding out where we ended up from their perspective as they start their audit process with this. Finance Policy Committee, we're here tonight. This is part of the kickoff of the process from a public perspective. We'll also be meeting with departments over the next month, and by beginning of March, the committee will end its process with recommendations, and then Scott and I, Heather behind the scenes, will be working on the state forms. There's a lot of statutory compliance with every municipal budget, and that's a lot of work behind the scenes. Once that's finalized, the expected introduction date of this budget is March 25th, and expected adoption date is April 22nd. Those are dates that are set. They can be no later than those dates by the state of New Jersey. If you don't meet those guidelines, you risk losing state aid money, okay? So we always make sure that those are dates we have. The only thing that might change is that if you had to make an amendment to the budget or the state changed those dates. But that's our dates based upon our council meetings, so we're gonna stick to those, and we've done that successfully every single year in the past. So again, a lot of priorities we have for every budget, some little nuances here. So 2025 priorities, pretty much remain the big topic items, but efficiency, again, Scott and I, Heather, part of our responsibility is obviously managing what we do, managing the town funds, and getting the policies of the council implemented. So we want to manage the expenditures, allocate the surplus to address non-discretionary costs, and in the end, by March, we're going to find out what the council wants to do to manage the final tax rate and what's achievable. Growth, we're looking for new revenue streams, as Councilman have been mentioned before. Not easy to do in municipal government, but we are finding ways to do that to get more revenue in to offset and reduce the tax base or tax levy. Sustainability, again, looking for ways to diversify the tax base. We've heard in the past, Westfield is unusually dependent upon single-family home residential taxes. That's kind of what makes Westfield special in many ways, because we don't have any industry here. We don't have, commercial, zones like maybe Clark does on Terminal Avenue. But the taxpayers obviously bear a very large burden of the taxes. So the more things we can do to kind of shift that pendulum can help over time. Happens over decades, not over in 1 year. Prioritize essential services as always: public safety, public works, downtown economic growth, recreation, all things we continue to prioritize equally across the board. And engagement, obviously looking for information from the public and identifying our priorities and implementing them in the calendar year. Again, one thing to mention, we are a calendar year budget. Most towns are, not every town, most towns are. And some people say, well, why are you starting the budget process in January? Isn't we start the year already? Well, the state process is you must adopt your calendar year budget by those March and April dates. But the state is on a fiscal year. So we've been doing our budget, obviously, since last November, December from an internal perspective, but the state's requirements are that your budget for that year is passed in March, April. In the meantime, we're operating off a temporary budget. So you'll see in the council meetings, we did one in January. We'll do another one probably in March. We pass a temporary budget until we have the final budget, and that's how it works. It seems a little counterintuitive, but it works pretty well. Couple of challenges we have already. So the budget process is just underway from a council perspective. Some challenges we already know we have. So our non-discretionary items are already up over $450,000. Some of those items on the left-hand side there are things like the Railway Valley Sewage Authority, pension costs, insurance, health and liability insurance, reserve for uncollected taxes, debt service, utilities, all the things that, our own household budgets go up and down. Reserve for uncollected taxes, just a reminder to the public what that is, because we collect the taxes, the town, not the library, not the county, not the school, because we collect taxes, we employ a tax collector who collects all that $192 million, we are required to pay every other entity their tax bill, whether we collect it or not. So the town has a $2.7 million line item in its budget that's required by the law to budget for, and that's our reserve in case something wasn't collected. Not the library, not the county, not the school have to budget for that. And yet, if we didn't collect it, we have to pay them. So just another example of, as the town, who actually is a controlling agency of the collections, we have some other obligations that other entities do not have. Also, again, the services we provide, which we're happy to provide, do cost money. Public safety, police, all the things we do cost money. Fire department, public works, curbside leaf collection. Good picture of the guys doing the work there in the field this year. Curbside recycling. One thing about that the public should know, curbside recycling recycling markets in general, were kind of going crazy a few years ago. They've kind of stabilized. We were fortunate. We actually, a few years ago, we changed how we did curbside recycling in the sense of how we process it. We now have one vendor who hauls it from the street to a certified recycling agency that then processes it under state law. So we bifurcated the contract, and that saved us money. We actually went out to bid again last year, got such a great rate that we locked it in for 5 years, because the marketplace in recycling can go up and down very fast. So we now have a very set budget certainty for recycling at the curbside for 5 years. This is year one of that contract. And lastly, Conservation Center services. There are costs to that, but that's a great resource for the public. I'll mention tonight that I think we got it out already, but we are going to open the center every Saturday. So if you remember what we do in January, the center's open every Saturday for Christmas trees, for recycling and so forth. We then open every other Saturday in February and March. Historically, it wasn't a very big use, but since we've added so many recycling opportunities, food waste being one of them, other things, people really depend upon that every week. So we're gonna, on Saturdays only in February and March, instead of alternating Saturdays, it'll be every Saturday. It really adds 4 Saturdays to our list, but we can say now publicly that we're open every single Saturday throughout the course of the year at the Conservation Center. And that's a very small cost. And by the way, one last thing to say, another grant, we get a grant called the Clean Communities Grant. We use that to offset our costs at the center. So it's not the entire Saturday cost, but some of the Saturday cost is offset by money we get from the state of New Jersey. So some of our challenges are there, we already know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Not for the residents, not me. That's right.
But I just, on that topic, one last thing to say. Thank you to Public Works Director Craig Gibson and Assistant Director Rich Eubanks. They do a phenomenal job managing all the Public Works things. But when this was brought to our attention, I was over there at their office at 7 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday to discuss these things. And it's one thing to say you're going to do it. It's another thing to say, can you get the staff to do it? Right? This is overtime for the staff, but it's also, these guys have a lot of other things going on in their life. We have a lot of overtime for other things they have to do. And the staff actually was, some of the staff was excited to do it. So, sometimes they want to break from the center because there's a lot of work. But the 4 Saturdays can be filled, no problem at all. So that's great news. Okay, capital. So we're working on capital. 6-year plan is required. 3-year plan is what we focus on from an allocation perspective. So again, because we're in good financial shape, because we have good surplus to start, and because we manage our debt service very well, we can continue an aggressive capital plan. Most of the aggressiveness we'll get to in a minute about roads, but let's mention some things that are under consideration for 2025. Quimby Street Design Plan. We've talked about Quimby Street being redone, being part of the One Westfield Place program. Is now not part of that anymore. It's separated out. It's going to be for the council to decide how and when they want to do it. So what's under consideration this year is to hire a consultant. work off some of the work that's been done already, and come up with a design plan for the street, which would turn into plans and specs to be bid out for a future contractor to come in and actually perform the work. So that's something that's being considered this year, a design plan cost. Houlihan Sidfay parking lot upgrades and restroom facility. This has been going on. We have a consultant working on this now. We just got back some information on various proposals for the expansion and adding restrooms there. We actually, I see Recreation Commission Chairwoman here, Jen Gilman, so we bring that back to her committee and her commission with committee, and basically going through those proposals, talking to the sports leagues that use that facility, see if they want to contribute in any way, and then hopefully that'll be something we can actually award a contract sometime this year to begin that process. And that's a safety issue from a parking lot expansion, getting people off the street there on a busy road, county road, and also a restroom facility, which has had portage on since 2005, since it was open. Assessment of the sanitary sewer system. Talk about this as well. We have two sewer systems. One is a stormwater system, which we deal with on an annual basis in spot areas through road paving program. The sanitary sewer system really is something that obviously is just as important, but it's a different kind of system, and basically we're looking to do an assessment of that system to analyze what's the condition in many areas, what might be the cost of our system, and what kind of recommendations do they have about proactive maintenance. And there's going to be more talk about this in the future, but this is, I think, is something that the council wants to do to get a true handle on what the cost and liability of the system is, and then we can kind of make some decisions from there. So that's something that's being considered as well. As always, recreation and park improvements being considered. We mentioned Houlihan Sidfay already. Stormwater drainage improvements, I mentioned that already with road programs. DPW fuel station design and replacement. So we have a fuel station that fuels not only all of our vehicles that we have to do the work, police, fire, public works, health department, recreation department. We also provide the fuel to the Board of Education vehicles. We also provide the fuel to the rescue squad vehicles. We also have a shared service with Fanwood. So our system is actually, I think, 1987, our fueling system, and seen better days. Most importantly, though, it's an old style system. It has underground tanks. Well, today's world, you don't do that anymore. You put everything above ground. So if something was to leak, you can see it and fix it right away. So we're in the process right now of getting design finalized to put a new fueling station system in our public works lot in 2025 if we can. And then the following year, go back and decommission the old station. And then that will actually not only be much more efficient and brand new and safe for our people, but it might also give us an opportunity to expand our shared services to other communities. Because this is not a small thing. We're a larger town in this area. We have more capacity in some communities, and the communities can benefit from that, as Fanwood is doing right now with us. So that's something we're working on. Hope to have that to the council in the next month or two. Public safety improvements and equipment, always chiefs give us information they need for their people. And then lastly, road paving. So road paving never stops. Road paving is road paving, ADA compliance, stormwater management, all those things included. This next slide, just a little bar chart here about what's been accomplished and what's proposed. So since 2019, you might remember we did a road assessment. We actually updated it since that time. So we've done 2 road assessments in town, giving what's called a PCI score to every road, a pavement condition index score to every road. That helps the council decide and the professionals decide what road should take priority. Then we overlay that with, okay, you can't just do worst to first because basically it might not be most efficient for a contractor. We then grid the roads in an area, okay, this grid can be done. So we only have to go in there once, and then we want to go back there for 10, 15, 20 years, depending on the volume of traffic. So right now, since the assessment, we've been posting on our website a 3-year paving list. The year that we're in, or the year that's passed, what we did, and then 2 years ahead. So on our website now, you can see what we did in 24. I can see actually every year here, but what we did in 24, what we completed. So we did 5.7 miles. The utilities did 11 miles at their expense because they did infrastructure work. In 25, we have planned 7.9 miles of road on us, and the utilities have planned 3 miles of road on their front. Right now for 26, utilities have not given us their information yet for 26. We know that 7.2 miles is on our list. Why? If the utilities never came back to us again, did no more work in town, which is of course too good to be true, but if they never did, 2018 to 26, every road in town will have been paved completely. So, and that's 100 miles of road, but really 200 miles of travel lane paved in that number of years, which is really unheard of. And that's because we've been aggressive about how many miles of road we're paving, but more importantly, the requirements of the utilities when they do the infrastructure work, they don't just pave the patch They don't pave half the road, they pave the entire road, curb to curb, end to end, as per the engineer's requirements. So that's been as you can see, an amazing, if you do the math on the sheet here, it's almost 50-50 of the amount of roads they've paved versus we've paved, and that's millions and tens of millions of dollars of money that the town would have had to pave on their own and not as fast, that they're actually doing at our expense. So, at their expense. So, again, what's that?
It goes on my gas bill.
It might. It may go on.
So I applaud this, but understand.
Yep.
Not that I don't pay for it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. However, everything, there's no free lunch, as you know. So, anyway, so that's just a pretty remarkable slide. And again, if you want to see if your road has not been paved and you want to see where it is on the list, 25 or 26, you can go on our website and you can see that list there. A couple of other opportunities we have in 2025. Again, surplus. So we actually had a very good year in surplus 24 to 25. We basically generated over $5 million of surplus. We had a very good year. Added that to the $8 million in change we had. We were starting 2025 with $14 million of surplus. You remember on the previous slide, we talked about our goal was to generate money back to $11 million. Well, we've exceeded that. And so that's, again, another remarkable revenue year. And so we have a healthy surplus, which helps us strategically make choices that you may not have if you don't have as much surplus. So mostly looking to reduce the final tax rate to the residents. 2, new expected revenues. This was mentioned by Councilman Havgood. So this is the first year we'll be able to anticipate part of the Westfield Crossing pilot funds. One detail about pilot monies, because not no development, most developments do not fill up the day after they're built, meaning they're not fully occupied the day after they're built, commercial or residential. It takes time for that to happen. So the pilot money that you get is prorated until they have full occupancy. So it could take a year or two that happens, but nonetheless, we will be able to anticipate pilot money for Westfield Crossing for the first time in 24, and that will only go up or 25, and will only go up in future years. And also we have some rental facility income for the first time. Our restaurant Maze, now that they're open and functioning, they'll be paying rent. Obviously, they already started paying rent, so that's a small but important, obviously, number to actually add to our revenue, which we didn't have before. So all these little things add up, and as you said before, every dollar we get from revenue can help to reduce the tax levy to the residents for the town purposes. And then added ratables. Ratable number is important. That's what I said before about building department permits. So people do work in their homes, we get money from that perspective to get people increase the value of their homes. That increased value then translates to ratable increases for the town. So for 2024 to 25, the town added $64 million in change to its total ratable amount. For comparison, last year was $74 million was added. The year before that, I think it was $85 million. Still a big amount, slightly going down a bit, but nonetheless, we're adding to the total. So that means that the work continues, people are adding to their homes, investing in their homes through permits, and the assessments of their homes go up. What does that mean? Why is that important? What happens is when the ratable increases, the total ratable value of the town, which is over $8 billion, that's the divisor for every single budget in town, library, county, school, and town. So if the ratables are increasing, your divisor is increasing. So if you, hypothetically, we've said this before at budget meetings where the town council came up with a 2% levy cap, but the ratables went up by half a point. What's given to the residents is a point and a half is your increase because the ratables have offset as part of the increase. So ratables going up every year is important. I've been here a long time. I've been here when the ratables were not going up. They were going down. So through that 2010, 11, 12, 13, where ratables are going down because recession time hit, and so it can go the other way as well. We're not in that situation right now, and normally are not, but it can go the other way. But right now we're doing very well, and I want to thank Neil Rubenstein, our tax assessor, who works really, really well with Scott Olson in his office, Frank Vuosa, our construction official. This stuff doesn't happen by itself. Permits have to be filed, have to be communicated to the assessor's office. They have to understand, visit the property, talk to the property owner. What are you doing? What kind of improvements are you doing? Is it a kitchen? Is it a bathroom? How many bathrooms? How many bedrooms? All that has to be assessed, and then the assessment can be increased at a later time in that year or the following year. So those are important things to keep up on. It helps the town manage its final tax bill. So last slide here. Again, we're in a great position. Again, like we were last year, we have a lot of flexibility. We have a high surplus to use to manage the town's portion of the budget. We have, we want to maintain exceptional oversight, financial oversight, which we continue to do. Prioritize public safety, which is always the case. Enhance town parks and recreational opportunities. There's lots of recreational projects in the queue. We mentioned pool filtration. We mentioned Memorial Park Playground opening up. That's a new playground right there, which will be opening in a matter of weeks with the ribbon cutting, hopefully. We have Houlihan Fade project in the mix. We have quality of life priorities going on, street signs, to name one of them, stormwater issues that we can talk about, resident engagement and inclusivity. We're in the process of actually refreshing our website later this year. And again, supporting responsible development to meet our affordable housing obligations. We've been talking about that for the past month on the council. We're working towards that till June. So a lot of opportunities, and because we're our fiscal health, we're in a good spot. So that's the slide presentation. Reminder to the public that may not be in the room tonight, we have a budget at westfieldnj.gov email address. We've had that for years. If you have a budget question or a suggestion, you can email that. Our website is the westfieldnj.gov, of course. And a reminder, all of our budget documentation from every single year for probably over 10 years, I think, or maybe 8 or 9 years on the website is there. So you can go there and look at past tax letters, past budget presentations, past budgets, and do comparisons if you want. But everything's up there, and we'll be putting all this. This will be on the website. And as we go through the budget process, every public information we give out there will be on the website to follow. So anything else you want to add to before we open up for questions? Yeah, thanks.
I think the only thing that might be worth mentioning before we get into questions is just to make sure to differentiate between the operating budget and the capital budget. So as Jim was going through it, we obviously have to figure out how we cover all of our costs for this, operating costs for the year. But the things that showed up in the later slides are monies that we're allocating for bigger, longer term, big capital expenditures that, really make the difference in terms of quality of life and public safety and improvements to town. So, any questions?
Questions?
In 2024, I believe it said that 1.6 million was spent on the capital plan. Are all of those projects completed, or are some carrying over into 2025?
That's fine. We'll let someone else go and I'll give it back to you.
So I just want to make sure
Yeah.
I was clear about what was, no, so it wasn't, 1.6 million was the grant funding received. Yeah.
In terms of the current capital plan work, is it all complete, or does some carry over into 2025?
Okay, so just for the public, the question from Mrs. Bonacci is about capital planning, and are the projects that were allocated in 2024 completed, or some carryover? So capital, Councilman Havigan mentioned this important distinction. So unlike the operating budget, which is a calendar year thing and ends at the end of the year, capital can carry over for many years. So in this case, most of our capital projects are done for 24 that were allocated in 24, but not all of them, and some are carryover. So, and again, for a municipality, you cannot pay for services until they're completed. So, but the money does stay there, and if we need to pay for it this year, and like Memorial Park Playground, for example, started last year, some grant funding went towards that, anything left for capital, and the bills will come in later in a few months from now, we'll pay for that out of last year. Another question. You go ahead, you can say, I'll repeat the question. Yeah, go ahead. Okay,
But I
good.
can ask a ton of questions. But regarding the 1.6 million grant funding, so with the funding disruptions going on now, I was curious if any of this funding is vulnerable to that, since of course the grants are reimbursed after the work is complete. And so I'm wondering if you're looking at any vulnerabilities.
Yeah, so a couple things about that. So we all heard about the president freezing funding, federal funding particularly. Westfield and most towns don't get a lot of federal funding. We get a lot of state funding. And the state funding is not right now in peril, and most of that $1.6 million is state funding. There are a few things that we do get that come from the federal government through the county and or the state and then come to communities. I'll say community development block grant money, for example. We get small amounts to do small projects. For example, we had what's called CDBG funding. We got some money to do some technology on some door systems. Those projects are already in place. Most of the money's been received. We have not gotten, and right now, as you all heard too, that they rescinded their federal funding hold. And there's also a lawsuit filed. But we don't expect that to stay that way. So basically, we're fortunate in the sense that most of our funding comes from the state, and any federal funding that we do have right now is projects that are either not started or have not been approved yet, so that were federal funding. So we have one project that was awarded, I think it was 2 years ago now, for sidewalk improvements, but along North Avenue. But the process for federal grants, unlike state or local grants. State or local grants, one example is the county infrastructure grant. County does a great job with this grant. It has to be spent in the year they award it, must be spent by December 31st or you lose it. And so they force you to put it to a project you done right away, paving project. In this case, we used $100,000 of the infrastructure grant for the Memorial Park Playground. Got it, finished it, paid for it. But other grants, like federal grants, the process can take 2 or 3 years before the paperwork's even done, before you start the project. So we have 1 or 2 of those. That's unfortunately, it sounds funny, but it's not uncommon. But in our case, we're not, this 1.6, we're not concerned about. Anyone else? Yes.
2 questions. What determines the reserve for uncollected taxes? Is it a fixed amount or a percentage of the total taxes? And the second question is the Pocket Park, which was just purchased with a Jiffy Lube site on Central and South. Did we lose income from that property since it was generating property tax? And how much did we actually lose? And what is it going to cost the town for the Superfund side cleanup and for restoration?
Okay, lots of questions. Okay, first question, reserve for uncollected taxes. That's a calculation that the town makes. It's a percentage. It's based upon the percentage you think you're going to collect versus what you do collect. And there's a statutory process for that. So CFO and I meet with the auditors on that. If you look back and look at the records of our reserve for uncollected taxes, it basically tracks what the tax levy percentage is every year. It increases by 2% a year, and it should be tracking towards the tax levy amount. So ours, the 2% increase per year, it's about $50,000 in change. So, and that represents about a 98% and change per collection rate, a reserve for that. As you can see, we do collect more some years, but you have to have that in place. So our reserve is basically based upon a 2% tax levy cap, and it increases by that amount every year. In reference to the property on the corner of South and Central, 200 South Avenue, we have not purchased it yet. It's not finalized. If you might remember, for the public, we applied for a grant, which basically simple math. The town's council authorized a $900,000 ordinance to pay for the property. The property was $899,000. A few extra dollars in the ordinance for closing costs and other, various closing items. The grant we received, we've been awarded, is $660,000. So if indeed the process does go through to fruition and we actually purchase the property and this goes through, the net cost is roughly around $250,000 for the property. That has not happened yet. It is not a Superfund site. There are environmental issues there, but they're all handled, and we actually are working on that now. The delay comes from the grants coming from New Jersey Economic Development Agency. Too many acronyms. And they need to get paperwork finalized, get us an agreement to review. The council needs to do a resolution to approve that. It hasn't happened yet. Number 2, from an environmental perspective, the town is working on agreements to make sure that any environmental issues that go on from a previous owner are their responsibility, not the town's. So if we do own it, anything that would be monitoring wells or any further future would be another entity's cost. That's not been finalized yet either. And then lastly, the property owner is very anxious to sell, so we're hoping he can continue to be patient with us to do that. But nothing has happened yet, but you will hear about it in a few weeks if indeed it does happen. Property taxes, I don't remember the actual cost. It's very small, comparatively speaking. And yes, the town would lose that small amount of taxes. And I know this question was asked at a previous council meeting by Mrs. Bonacci. The cost for the project is not yet known, but there was an estimate put into the grant application for the EDA that the initial estimate to do the park, to create a pocket park, would be about $600,000. Very early estimate, not known yet, and of course, once we get the property, we have to go through and do that, and that would be the council's decision, when they want to do it, how much they want to spend, and what's required to be spent. And lastly, this grant allows for a 3-year window for all this to be done. First year is closing, finalizing, taking possession of the property, and then the next 2 years, you have time to actually formulate a plan and get the work done. So it's a 3-year window to get it done.
Can you tell us what is going to be the percentage increase on the property taxes if the budget goes through?
No, because we just started the budget process. So if you want to come to the March 25th meeting, when we introduce the town's budget, what we could tell you is what the town's portion might be. But we can't tell you what the school, the county, or the library is going to be because we don't know that. But right now, it's a good question, but it's a little premature. Come to the March 25th meeting, we can tell you what the town's portion will be. We're more than happy to share that with you.
Okay.
And that's why we're here tonight, because that's why we're here tonight at the beginning of the process, because we're reporting back on last year's budget, starting the new budget process. So for the next 6 weeks, we're going to be working on the budget, meeting with all the departments, making all those final decisions around the budget for 25. So.
Okay, that next question is,
Yeah.
So it was in the slide. I just think it's worth, I know everybody's obviously anxious to know what the tax rate will be, and we don't know. But we can look at our track record, which I'm really proud of, and I think my colleagues on the Finance Committee are proud of. Our average tax increase for the last 7 years has been 1.2%, far lower than inflation, far lower than the previous council. So we just want you to know that we're really focused on keeping that tax rate as low as possible, just to give you some encouragement that that's, sort of in our minds as we head into this process. That's why we literally go through every budget from every department, line by line, Saturday mornings too, to really, make sure that if money is being spent, it's spent wisely. I do think we've done a good job making sure that taxpayer dollars have been spent wisely over the last 7 years.
the next question would be, the school referendum says that the average house would pay about $1,000 more in taxes. Can you give me an approximate percentage of our tax increase just for the $1,000, and then the percentage increase for the increased operating cost? Because we're looking at, let's say, 2% plus some other percent for the debt service, and then another percent or whatever for the operating costs. So what's the total increase going to be?
I would love to give that to you, but you're in the wrong place. So those questions are very good questions, but what was mentioned before is it's important to know that this governmental agency, the town council, is only responsible for the town portion. I would never presume to speak anything intelligently about the school board. I don't manage that. I'm not the administrator there. I'm not the CFO. I'm not on the Board of Education. But those are great questions. I would recommend you ask them because those are questions they have some information for, I think. But I don't know that answer, and I wouldn't presume to know.
Well, I was going to switch it to the capital plan for 2025. You have a slide up. Just for a moment, for 2024, wait, let me stick to 2025. What is your budget? Do you have a budget number that you're going to allocate towards capital spending for 2025? And then, how are you prioritizing with all the departments, say between state of good repair, essential and nice to have? How are you going through and, because some people end up with 100% state of good repair projects versus nice to have. So it's a lot of questions in one, but it speaks to the strategy of the process for this.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, so as you can imagine, every department has a list. Some are wish list items, some are nice to have, some are required, some are safety items. There's a list of things. And so the council committee looks at that, meets with the department heads, we go through those and assess those. And so there's a 6-year plan that's required to be submitted. And as I said before, we look at a 3-year, it's on the website, so there's a 3-year plan we look at specifically for funding. So I'll give you an example. Fire department, they have SCBAs. It's actually breathing units they have when they have to go into a fire. It's a very large thing. It goes on their back when they go in there. They have to be replaced every so many years. They run out of air and so forth. So that's a requirement that the chief is planning for already in the future. He came to us last year and said, hey, it's not here yet. This is a requirement. It's a safety item for my people. I don't want to blindside you with it, obviously, in the same year I need it. So he mentioned to us last year, and they gave us an approximate cost. And then the question for the committee was, okay, do we have to do that all in 1 year? Can we split it over 2 years? So those are kind of decisions we discuss, and that's one example. But so right now in the 3-year plan, the council last year decided that let's put that into a split cost, half in 25, half in 26. They haven't discussed that again this year. They will, though. He'll come back and make a recommendation. Yes, that can happen because, we need it. Or, you know what, I can't do that for these reasons. Every department head must come in, make the case. Another example is vehicles, large vehicles, small vehicles, police vehicles, right? So, the council asks questions, well, is this a replacement vehicle? Is the vehicle in need of replacement? Can we get more years out of it? If we do, can it stay on first line patrol? Can it go to the detective bureau? All those things are vetted and discussed to make sure before we purchase something or lease something in some way, are we making the best decisions and using the money wisely? Those are 2 examples, but those are all vetted out. In reference to 2025, we don't have the number yet. We kind of do both processes parallel. So right now we're in the budget process for the operating budget. We'll be discussing the capital plan kind of parallel to that. The big number there is road projects. We already have the roads list set for the year, but there's other things that are added to that. Stormwater enhancements where necessary, ADA compliance, that also get factored into the estimates. And then there are other projects for town hall, managing facilities, roofs, and so forth. Yes.
So I think in your contact, you mentioned that we spend about $3 million a year in capital.
Yep.
So are you saying that this plan would be $3 million, and if you looked at the 3-year, that would be 9? Or are you thinking that you have more just because of the surplus? Now, I don't know if the 3 comes out of the surplus.
No, that's the, yeah.
The sense of how we do 3-year budgeting, because you can't start a project unless you know you can, 3 to 6 year fund. Look, I understand it's the same thing, but I'm trying to just get a handle on how you are you going to spend $10 million on this or 5?
No, what you mentioned, Councilman Contra mentioned, one of the other things that's factored in this discussion is debt service management, right? So, obviously we could spend $10 million tomorrow if we wanted to, but one thing to mention, every municipality is allowed to borrow a certain amount under state law. In Westfield's case, we could borrow over $250 million if we wanted to. We're not going to do that, right? So it's not good fiscal management. So one of the things that council takes into account is basically how is this going to affect our debt service going forward? On an annual basis, that's a big deal. It's a big number in the budget, and how do we manage it? So on average, we've spent $3.5 million on capital the past number of years. That also changes. When we say that, we're really referring to the omnibus capital ordinance that's passed in March, April for the majority of the things we're discussing. Could be some of these things, but historically it's been roads, public safety items, and so forth. Then there's also other items that can be adopted separately that might be for one-off things, like the property purchase for 200 South Avenue. That's a capital ordinance that allocating a one-time cost. In that case, the net debt service, if it went through, might only be $250, not $900. So everything is taken on, look at that specifically and how it's going to affect debt service. And then the debt service management itself is a whole different animal. Bonding, short-term notes, long-term notes, interest rates, when to go to the bond market. And if you look at our debt service of the past number of years, it's managed very well and it continues to maintain the AAA bond rating. And that's a big part of it. They look at debt service management. They look at statutory debt on the books. And they look at how the management team is handling it on a year-to-year basis. So all those things are factored into our process. He's got a question. There you go. Yeah.
Just with regard to, you have the slide up right now. I know you touched on it briefly, but maybe you could expand a little bit on assessment of sanitary system. Can you just, I didn't quite follow you, what you were explaining
Sure.
earlier. What do you have in mind? What are they planning on doing there? Obviously, it's important enough that it's one of the 8 bullets up there, so.
This is to go out to RFP or bid to hire a specialized engineering firm that looks at sanitary systems on our behalf, to basically have an assessment of the system. Age, structural integrity, recommend projects that may need to be done. Stormwater systems are very easy for us to manage. We do them in public works. We have a camera system. We do some sanitary work as well. But the sanitary system is a much different animal, has much more liability. And of course, as you know as an engineer yourself, when something sanitary breaks, you can't wait. You're out there the next day hiring somebody, and if not ourselves, it's got to be fixed right away. So we want to get a true handle on what our system actually, is, what condition it's in.
Townwide.
Townwide, yes. Yeah, townwide.
Isn't this something, isn't this something that maybe should have been done like a while? I mean, we got a lot of development going up that's scheduled to start construction in the next year or two. Isn't it a little bit late to start looking at this now? I mean.
No, bottom line is, we're looking to just get a sense of it. A couple things are important. Don't misinterpret the fact that we don't know what the system is like. This is an assessment of, a professional assessment. Our guys are out there with the cameras. We're doing now assessments of our storm and sanitary with our camera system. But we only have so much manpower and resources to do that. This is a town-wide assessment, so we can get a sense of.
This is a condition assessment or an assessment, like an engineering assessment of like capacity and ability to meet future demand and that sort of thing?
No. This is a condition assessment. Our system is actually, the capacity is there. We know that because of our Railway Valley Sewage Authority. We actually are one of the few communities in that system, the sanitary system. We actually own extra shares, and our capacity is actually very high compared to other communities in that. So we know our capacity is good, and we know that from the reports we get from RVSA. This is a condition assessment to see what kind of maintenance responsibilities the system's going to carry in the future, right? Just like any big, infrastructure thing we have. So, and this is a system that we really want to get a handle on that, so that if we need to budget money in the capital budget in the future to do things on our own, we can do that, or to outsource them if necessary.
So think of it as being proactive, to go out and take a look at it and see what things we might need to build into the capital budget because every year we have to add a new year. We constantly have to have a 6-year plan in place.
And Jim, you had a slide up early on, I think it showed a 41%, 59%. It had to do with revenue.
Oh, yeah.
How we get to 32.2 million.
How we get to the 50 plus, so the 31.
Yeah, so on the left-hand side there, of that 41%, of that green piece of the pie, what portion of that pie is state aid?
Let's see, state aid actually is just over $3 million. And that state aid is comprised of 2 pieces. It's energy tax receipts, which every town gets, and then it's what's called COMTRA, the Consolidated Municipal Tax Plan Act, which we get the minimum required. So just over $3 million of that 22 million.
Okay, so roughly 10% of the overall is.
Of that piece, yes. Yep.
And if that goes down for whatever reason next year, I don't know if we got a gubernatorial election next November or whatever, then that 41.59 obviously shifts, the balance of that shifts, right?
Yeah, the thing about state aid you have to understand is that state aid has never gone down, and it should be going up much more than it is. What the state's been doing for years is they give you the minimum increase. So, and we have a fixed amount, which is the COMTRA, okay? And then we have the energy tax receipts, which by law, every town has to get the minimum increase in that. So our state aid has been going up by small bits every year, or before this, like 10, 15 years ago, it was held frozen for about 10 years. So it's never gone down, but it can freeze. Hasn't done that recently, but it could. But we get small increases in state aid every year the past 10 years. It's not a number we're looking for big increases, but it is, again, every revenue is you have to assume you're not going to get the following year. But our history with state aid has been consistent, and it's going up very slightly every year.
And my last question has to do with the paving of the roads. What in terms of actual cost, what are we Westfield spending on all of the road paving versus what Elizabethtown Gas is spending?
So I don't know exactly what they're spending, but the
Yeah.
mileage, you can see they're doing much more than we are. But we know they're contractors or contractors that would bid on our jobs. We allocate anywhere between $2 and $2.5 million a year, or a little more than that, depending on the mileage we're doing, to road paving, which includes, within that number, includes million paving, includes ADA compliance ramps, and includes some stormwater things. And in some cases, sometimes pathway replacements when we're in the grid. If we're going to do something in that area, we finish the pathway while we're there. Yeah, on the high end, 2.5 to 2.7 million on the high end, low end, 2 million. Yep.
One of the benefits of paving all the roads, aside from the fact when we came into office, they were in pretty lousy condition and we weren't keeping up with the wear and tear on our roads, it should lead to less capital costs going forward. And Jim can probably describe this in more detail. But when we bring all the roads up to a high quality, a high PCI score, they won't all need to be milled and paved at the same rate that they had been. Right? There are other treatments that can be done to extend the life of the road. So instead of spending $2 or $2.5 million or whatever the number is per year on paving, that number could go down, right? Because we brought the quality up. So I think that's really important. This is at least I look at it as an absolute investment in our town. It touches everybody every day, and it was much needed. I do think it's also worth highlighting again. I don't know, was it back in 2018? I think it was 2018 where we passed the new ordinances that required utilities to actually pave curb to curb, end to end what they touch. Prior to that, they could just get away with a tiny little patch. That's how you ended up Grove Street, literally looked like a checkerboard, which is actually why I ran for office in the first place, because it was in such cruddy condition. So, by requiring utilities to do that, I think we've saved taxpayers, the last calculation was well over $20 million, right? Yes, those costs were shifted to the utilities, but then spread out across residents across the state. So actually, the per capita cost for a resident in Westfield is far lower through this approach than if we had absorbed this cost ourselves.
It's great that we passed that, but you have to understand that Elizabethtown Gas put new high-pressure gas lines in all throughout the town. So they would have had to have done it anyway.
If we hadn't changed that ordinance, then they would have just been able to patch. And now the reason that we have all these roads paid for by them is because they had to pay
For something
the
that
full road.
Prior to this ordinance, if I was the
So let me just put it, I've been here a long time, so 2018 and before, the town did not have a requirement to pave, okay? So what they were required to do, though, is do an infrared patch, either a long patch or a square patch or rectangular patch. And then the council back then was like, that's not really appropriate, so then we got them, without an ordinance, in some cases, to pave half the street. So they have a trench go down one half of the street, they paved half the street. Of course, not very aesthetic, one half of the street is brand new, other half. So we felt good about that at the time. So in 2018, the ordinance was actually passed in 19. 2018, we had our road paving program. It was 2019, and you see why almost 10 miles of road they came to us with and said, we want to do this. Wait a minute. So before the ordinance was even passed, we made a deal with Elizabethtown Gas. Actually, they came here to a council meeting, and I was up here with them to announce the deal to the town. No ordinance was there. They agreed with us before the ordinance was passed that they would agree to pave curb to curb, end to end, because they had so much inconvenience infrastructure work to be done in 1 year that they would do that for us. And in turn, what we did was increase our amount of paving so that we can get a lot of things done at the same time. Since that time, later that year, we passed the ordinance and said, thank you for that great proposal. We now want to codify it to make sure you have no choice going forward. So even though you're right, they would have to come do this infrastructure work no matter what. And New Jersey American Water, doing lead lines and they're doing they will have to come at some point in the future. Every town, not just Westfield. When they come in the future, they have no choice but to pave the whole road curb to curb, end to end. Before that, 418, they could have just patched. That was the rules.
I think what you're saying is somewhat misleading in that in the past they never did upgrades to the piping to the extent that they're doing
No,
now.
they always do upgrades to the
So-
piping.
Well, yes, but not not throughout the town. They are literally putting new gas piping throughout this entire town, okay? They're going to increase their ability, their capacity to pump gas to this town is going to go up by over 40%.
Yes.
Okay? They're not stupid. They're going to all the towns in New Jersey where the big developments are happening, where there's a lot of big developments popping up, and they're putting in high-pressure gas lines. High-pressure gas lines allow them to pump more gas. So they're making an investment, all right? Yes, it's costing them money to pave the roads, but they're making an investment, all right? So in the past, when they came and when you had an upgrade done to your house because you had a new generator put in, or the guy around the corner from you had, they did a knockdown, they put 2 houses up and had to bring 2 new services in. Yes, you're correct. They only had a patch, all right? But for a project of the magnitude of what they're doing, all right, and they started this in New York City years ago, all right, because I was involved in it in New York City. They would have to pave curb to curb, end to end on all the streets because of the magnitude of the project. Now, I'm not taking away or detracting from what Councilman Contract said. I'm just trying to get a handle on what we're spending, because I'm kind of sitting here, and I'm glad I heard you say, well, we're spending money on ADA upgrades and everything else, because I'm sitting here and I'm wondering, why are we spending, let them spend all the money, because they're putting the gas lines in. They're the ones that are primarily going to benefit from this. Yes, we're going to benefit from new streets, but like I said, they're making an investment, all right? They're looking forward to the future. When they're done here, the money's going to keep coming in for them, because their ability to deliver gas is going to go up by over 40%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm
no,
glad to hear what you said, that of that 3 million, it's not just we're going out and paving roads.
Yeah.
Because
one last thing, just to wrap us up. So, yes, they're making an investment, no doubt about it, right? And that's good for the town and the homeowners. But previous to this, go back to 2012, 15, 10, 9, all those years, there weren't just one-off projects happening. American Water and Louisiana Gas were in here doing projects that were large, okay? So it wasn't, and they were not required to pay back then either. Without the ordinance, trust me, every utility is not going to actually agree to pave unless they're forced to. That being said, the investments are being made, and it's all good for the town. And we're putting in money too to do this. If we, and they're not doing the entire town, which is important. They give us maps, both American Water and Louisiana Gas. They're not doing the entire town. They're identifying the areas of their system, their infrastructure, that are deteriorating or have to be replaced, and they're doing those grids. Not the entire town. You see what's happening on Springfield Avenue, right? That's a county road that goes through Westfield, Kenilworth. It's a major Louisiana Gas job going there. That's a grid they need to replace because it's an aging system. They're putting in high-pressure lines after the fact to improve infrastructure, but they're not doing the entire town. They're doing grids in town, about 7 or 8 grids in town, not the entire town. So again, yes, they're making an investment. We're making an investment as well, and we're getting them to make investments in our roads when they finish, in full, rather than just patching. So, yes.
Back to the 2025 capital plan and the options you're putting up there that you're looking at. I wondered if you could add providing a comprehensive traffic analysis for the full town. I know we've written some scope. I think that would be really prudent in light of all the development. I know there's been back and forth, who did what traffic study, but a really comprehensive plan that looked at all of the major feeder streets, north, south, all this boulevard, all of them, and really understanding how traffic flows so that we have a new baseline, so that, as we look at new development, as Elizabethtown Gas is anticipating, as we have the affordable housing mandate, that we can actually really understand from a planning perspective the impacts. I would really love to see that. It's just as important as a sanitary system assessment or a stormwater drainage. Those are infrastructure, that other things flow from. So I would ask that the councilman here really take me seriously and put that on the list. It's about 100 grand, but I think it's well worth it.
So just on that front, we definitely, yeah, thank you for the
Thank
suggestion.
you, that's why I'm suggesting. I could give you more, but
But
that's.
let me just say one thing about that suggestion. It's a great suggestion, but I think it's been mentioned before. So we just got an SS4A grant we got, and the county has it as well. So, and part of that grant is assessing all the roads in the county and all the roads in the town, and it's taking into account the developments that are happening, not just in Westfield, but the developments that are happening in neighboring towns. So that's kind of underway already.
Started anything yet. We've tried to talk to the county.
Yeah.
You know, we've been investigating to find out the status, and it's actually at 0%. So what I'm talking about is, you know, take the bull by the horns, hire your own independent traffic consultant, and look at your town and your boundary so that when the county steps it up and starts to do the work, you can actually, you know, feed into that and understand. That's what I'm talking about. That they haven't really started anything yet.
Okay, so
Okay?
I understand. So Chief Ballor and I attended a county meeting for the SS4A grant, which was about a few months ago. They're doing behind-the-scenes work with their consultant. And in reference to our consultant, we are going to hire a consultant this year through the SS4A grant that we got. We're waiting for the paperwork to come back from the state, and we expect within probably a month or two, we'll be able to go out to RFP to hire a consultant to do our roads, the town roads, which will be complementary to the county roads that come through the town. So it does take longer than anyone likes, I get it, but it is underway, and we'll be hiring our consultant this year through the SS4A grant that we got. And that was a $100,000 grant. You're right on the money. Yep.
And Jim, isn't it true though that when we did the circulation plan, part of the master plan, I know it was like I just thought maybe you should comment on the circulation plan that was part of the master plan from 2 or 3 years ago, because I think that also provides the insight that Mrs. Bonacci is looking for.
So well, a couple things about that. So it was the traffic and circulation plan, which was a separate element of after the master plan was done. That took into account existing conditions and any past conditions. I think what she's asking for, that's a start, but she's asking for future proposals and how other towns are affected along the corridors. But that's what the SS4A is really looking at. Doesn't happen as fast as everybody wants, but the county already has their consultant. It's moving slow, but we have attended a meeting, and we're going to be hiring our consultant this year to do our roads. So it's actually perfect timing. Both plans will be able to jointly collaborate, and we'll see what consultant we get from us, and maybe that'll be actually easy to work with their consultants. So,
Jim, were there notes of that meeting?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Were there notes of that meeting issued?
I don't know. I wasn't at our meeting. Chief and I attended. It was last.
I sent you an email and asked you for those notes. Would you be able to look into it and send us?
I don't have. No, I don't have any notes on it. But definitely call. If you talk, I don't know.
I guess that's the count.
Yeah, I was gonna say ask the county. I don't know who you talked to the county, but
Well, didn't you go to the meeting?
Liza Betts. Yeah, yeah. Liza Betts. I sat next to her. Yeah. Yeah, Liza Betts was there. There was people from all over the state there, all over the county, excuse me, there. Yeah, the meeting, I don't know what, it was last November, I think it was, somewhere in that range. But we attended, we sat next to Liza Betts, actually, sat next to other towns. And so that was their kickoff meeting. And we're waiting for another meeting to be set, and they're working with their consultant behind it. Their consultant, they had 2 consultants on the job. I can't remember, but they're working on it. So I don't know who you talked to, but definitely talked to Liza Betts. She was there.
Jim, we're all taxpayers. We get our bills in the mail, and as Mr. Contract pointed out, you've held the budget to 1.2% from the last year, approximately. We know that when we open a tax bill, we don't see 1% or 2%. We're going to be seeing a lot, and a lot of it's going to be related to the schools. And I know you deferred to go to those meetings, which I have and will do, and to find out what's going on. The $225 million proposal that we're going to approve or not approve, on top of another 2% increase, on top of the 2.5% increase that we had in '24, that concerns us as citizens. So therefore, I completely understand that the council, the mayor, and the town administrator have little control over that part of the budget. You're discussing our local budget. But my question is this: how much can you help us control these horrible increases that are coming through. I mean, the $225 million has things there that have to be done. The capital improvements, the roofs, the air conditioning, the bathrooms, they have to be done. I don't think anybody here would want to stop them, much like we would need a new firehouse. Nobody's thinking about it. But there are some things in there that we have to scratch our head and say, is that really necessary? That's not your job to answer my question. I have no question. My question is this: how much can the council and the mayor help us out in capping some of those costs from the school, so not to make some of our taxes intolerable?
Okay, but the simple, okay, hold on, I'm responding. I know, let me respond, thank you. So, Steve, excuse me, hold on. Steve, so the answer to your question is, just a couple things to remember. So, again, a couple things. There are 3 separate elected bodies that manage different pieces of the puzzle here. The town council manages this piece, and you know that already. You attend those meetings and so forth. The mayor, I think you were here Tuesday night when a similar question was asked. She answered the question that we've already been in multiple conversations with the school board for future opportunities for capital offsets for items that they may actually propose. And we've already told them that basically when that time comes, if this referendum passes, just because it's proposed doesn't mean it's going to pass, but if it passes and it does result in a tax increase for the school budget, all right, whatever that is, it won't happen right away, but it will happen over time. Then when they have that ready, and then on our side, the town council side, when and if we get a pilot money that comes in to a certain amount, that's when the town council can actually decide if it wants to allocate money for capital expenses of the school to help them reduce their tax burden. But we don't have any money from One Westfield Place. We may not have it for many years, even if it was to start tomorrow. So as the mayor said, you can't allocate money you don't have right now. But those discussions have taken place. I've been in those meetings. We've talked to the business administrator, Angelinda, business administrator, superintendent of the schools, the chairman of the Board of Education. We're having these discussions because it's important to have. So we're planning for the future. If they get the referendum passed, even if they don't get it passed, right? Let's assume they don't get it passed.
But that referendum should be divided up into several segments, like
Well,
they
but
did in Scotch Plains.
Again, that's their,
That's their side.
talk to them, make that suggestion. Great
There's
suggestion.
there's nothing you could do to help.
There's separate governmental agencies elected by you. So if you want to, choose somebody else, feel free to do that. But you elected this body to run this piece of the puzzle. They're elected to run that piece of the puzzle. I can't, and no one here can tell them what to do. Is that how it works in the system? But we coordinate with them. We work very
Right.
well with them. Yeah, we work very well with them.
That's what I was, is who's going to help try to coordinate, who's going to cap our total cost,
Yeah.
not just the 1%, 2%, which we understand.
Yeah.
That's my.
No, I understand.
We got it. I know. Just one more. But thank
All
you.
right. Go ahead.
David, yes, that's fine. I'm looking at your bullets for 2025 capital plan, and I'm wondering, and I know you're going to tell me that. Okay, so I understand. There are options up there, potential. I wanted to add one or have for your consideration, which is the sidewalks around the downtown. And I understand it's the owner's responsibility, and maybe they could work out a CAM with DWC, I don't know. But I think in terms of the impression that people get from our town when they come to shop, the sidewalks are in really bad shape, and I use them every day to get to the train. So it would be nice if that could become one of the potential bullets, and you work out a way to even highlight, maybe essential sidewalks, say versus Quimby, which is a different kind of project. Anyway, that's my suggestion.
Thank you.
If you'll
Good
consider it.
suggestion. Okay.
Let me also add that I use the town, the main train station parking lot. Number one, it's in terrible condition. Relining it or repainting it is not going to be enough. They need to repave it and reline it. And frankly, it's getting more and more difficult to get parking spaces. And the plans under OWP are completely inadequate for current needs, and they're even more inadequate for future needs. And this is a matter that the town has to address. This is a commuter town. Commuters have to be treated fairly. we're probably 10 to 20% of the population, given the commuters and the families. And right now, the the train station parking lot is a disgrace. It's an embarrassment to the town. It looks like crap.
Thank you. Okay. Go. Yes.
I wouldn't pave something that's gonna get destroyed.
Okay, so thank you, everybody.
If you have other, you didn't raise your hand earlier. Do you really have a question now? Okay. This is the last question.
Okay, this is the last question.
If there are others, then
This is as a concerned resident, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. And I ran a business for 35 years. All the principles are the same. You know, I had to keep my credit rating up so I could lease equipment. I had to keep a surplus, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm looking at this whole picture and I see that we already used some of the surplus in '24. So we're coming into '25 with less of a surplus than we did going from '23 to '24. You're going to hope that the 41% you get from outside the tax base as income is going to still keep going as you plan. You've got this huge projection here of things you want to do. I see Tamaqua's coming down the line. I hear nothing about how much that possibly is going to cost, because we're first getting into the designing, then we're going to get into the implementation, then we're going to get into the keep up. I don't know where that money's coming from. I don't know if we all have it. If it's part of that surplus, then there's not that much surplus. If we've got it on the side, then we don't know about it. And if you're going to have to take money out, where are you going to get it? Now, you kept our taxes down because you took surplus. But this year you may not be able to take surplus because you may not get enough on that 41%. Then we've got to worry about what's going on with the schools. And I know it's separate, but I as a taxpayer can't keep it separate. I got to look at it all together. And then the pilot programs come in and the county gets less money. So the county kept it at 0 this year too, but that doesn't mean they're going to keep it at 0 for '25. So if the county goes up and the school passes all this stuff and it goes up more, and it's built the last 2 years on each other, so if this increased budget on top of the 2% or whatever cap, even if the referendum gets voted in or down, that's getting built on last year, which got built on the '23 year. So now you've got that pushing on me. You got maybe the county might raise their even 1 to 2%, and you might have to raise your taxes 1 to 2% if your 41 doesn't come in like you plan it. And just in talking about the roads, I understand everything that happened, but maybe if you were more transparent and said, we went, and I'm proud of you that you went into a shared agreement with the utilities. I think that's wonderful. And I understand you're right. They would have just repaired and they wouldn't have totally done it. And I love the roads that are done. But on my bill, it tells me that I'm paying for when they have to help fix the roads.
What's your question?
On my bill for both the water.
What's your question?
Oh, well, my question is how are you going to do all this? I mean, Quimby was supposed to be at the third part of One Westfield Place. Now we're pushing it forward. At the same time, we're doing Tamaqua's Park. At the same time, we have to assess the sanitary system, and if it's got to be repaired, we got to repair it. This year, you had to borrow to fix the HVAC system here because it came unexpected. You had a road situation that you had to borrow extra because it was above budget. So
What's the question?
I want to know how you're going to keep my taxes down here while the Board of Ed is raising it through the roof, and the county might actually raise it too. And I'm hoping that when you have to pick your projects, Tamaqua's will be above Quimby, because I think we need that more. And I think we need the sanitary system assessed more, and the stormwater, because you're building like crazy, and we're going to have a problem with the sewer system. And don't forget, our sewer bill is going to go up again this year. It's been going up every single year. And when you start to possibly get used, and I know you can start to use that north end of the One Westfield Place condition, and if that South Avenue goes through, as you are getting rid of those parking spaces, and the 2 garages aren't totally filled, You're gonna lose permit parking income on that 41%. You're gonna lose some parking on that North Avenue train station. You're turning
Okay,
it into a
so
town strip.
just wanted to, so,
got it.
I'm glad you have,
That's my concern.
I'm glad you have a crystal
Those are
ball.
all of our
Yeah.
concerns too.
Yeah.
We spent.
How are you gonna
We spend,
keep
so.
me here and be
So,
able to live here
okay,
as a senior
okay.
citizen?
So Mrs. Goodman, you need to give this administration credit for the fact that they have done an extraordinary job of managing our budgets, keeping a AAA bond rating, which keeps any borrowing that we have to do as low as possible, for good fiscal management and investment that brings extra interest in. Of course, we worry about these things every year. And so I'm talking now.
Tornadoes coming east.
Mrs. Goodman, this is a Q&A. It was an opportunity for all residents to let us know things that you have concerns about or that you'd like us to consider in the budget process. I think you gave us a few things to think about. Don't worry, we have all the same concerns that you have. I can't say it any more clearly. We sit in all of these budget meetings and look at every single line item, and we think about how we can save money, because just like you're paying taxes, all of us are paying taxes too. So I just want you to feel comforted that there are a lot of people paying attention to the very concerns that you have, and we spend a lot of time, as you can see in our past record, trying to bring, twice we have not increased municipal tax rates. And it had never really been done in this town before, to think about the money that we have available to us and use it as a way to keep the costs of the residents down as much as we can. So I know we're not going to be able to address all of your concerns in detail tonight, but I just want you to know that that's exactly what we do in these meetings, is to watch how the money is spent as if it is ours, okay? And I'll end up by thanking everyone for coming out tonight, and thank you for recording. And we'll look forward to getting any other questions that anyone in the town has by email, okay? All right, thank you so much.